The loot jangled around in our trunk as the getaway car swerved down the mountain roads. My stomach was doing the same thing in my midsection. "Lucy," I told the driver, "could you try to take these curves a little slower? I don't feel so good." "Oh, sure, Charlie. I'm going to slow down so we could get caught." Lucy, which was not her real name, spat back at me. "Are you crazy, dude?" "Yeah, shut the hell up, Charlie," Linus said from his spot in the back seat next to me. "We tripped that alarm. They'll be coming for us." I closed my eyes and tried to put my head between my knees. "Just hang on," I told myself. The three of us were still wearing our blank white masks to maintain anonymity. I desperately wanted to take mine off, but I knew they'd kill me if I did. We were coming down from the Van Heim estate at the top of Seether's Mountain. The house belonged to the billionaire Nestor Van Heim, who we knew was out of town at a big tech conference in Vegas that weekend. Linus, which again was not his real name, had hacked into the security system to give us 15 minutes in the Van Heim estate, where we could grab as much artwork and cash as possible. Nestor Van Heim was legendary for his globe-trotting art collection. Sure, he was more well known for his digital surveillance technology, but everyone knew this guy was a huge collector of odd art from around the world. We grabbed paintings with faces that seemed to move. We got sculptures of hands with black pointy fingers. And yeah, we grabbed the usual stuff like designer clothes, and we also rummaged through his drawers to find cash. So we had a couple $1,000,000 worth of stuff in the trunk and in our pockets. I grabbed the coolest thing I could find. It was this knife that had a perfectly reflective blade, like a mirror. It was thick near the hilt, so thick you could see your whole face reflected in it. I grabbed that and the scabbard for it, and it was tucked into one of the large pockets on my cargo pants. I just needed to make it down this damn mountain without barfing. "You good, Charlie?" Linus asked me. I shook my head. I could already taste bile. I could taste the burger I hesitantly ate before the heist. It was hurrying to get out of me like we were hustling to get out of the estate a few minutes before. "Can't puke in here, Charlie," Linus said. "Can't leave any evidence." Just take it a little easier, Lucy," I said. "No can do, Charlie," she replied. "Lucy, just slow down up here," Linus said. I heard him whisper something to her. "Thanks, man," I said. The car slowed down, and in an instant, Linus undid my seatbelt and opened the door next to me. "What the?" I didn't have time to finish my question before Linus shoved me out of the moving car. I heard a sorry as the car rolled away and the doors slammed. I tumbled to a stop at the rocky side of the mountain road. The world around me spun. I threw off my mask, and the contents of my stomach finally made their escape. The torrent of bile and beef glimmered in the moonlight as it came out of me. It floated like a pool of shame as it spread across the rocky ground. I spat and coughed and yelled some obscenity after the car. I couldn't believe it. I was out here alone on Seether's Mountain, a sitting duck for the cops when they came up this road, and I'd nothing to give them. Linus and Lucy knew I couldn't ID them. I didn't know their names or faces, and I'd never met them before that night. I didn't even know the guy who arranged this heist. He had done all this communicating via encrypted messages and on phone calls where his voice was altered. So yeah, I was screwed. I had to get off this road, but there was nowhere to go. This was a road cut into the damn mountain. It wasn't like I could escape into the woods or something. I climbed to my feet, picked up my mask, and started walking. I was still a little woozy, but the fresh night air felt good. I stumbled my way along the side of the road for a while when I came to my saving grace. A cave. I dug into one of my pockets for the headlamp I wore during the heist and strapped it to my head. I still felt the weight of the knife in one of my other pockets, along with a roll of cash in another one. If I could hide out in this cave long enough to evade the authorities, I could still make out pretty well. I turned on my headlamp and peeked into the cave. It was a narrow entryway, but it looked pretty deep. Plus, what other choice did I have? Sit here and wait for the cops to come? And so I stepped into the cave. From the echoes of my footsteps, I could tell this cave went way back. I proceeded forward carefully, not wanting to accidentally step into a crevasse and plunge to my death. I tossed my mask into one crack in the earth, watching as the pale face disappeared into the abyss. The cave opened up into an enormous chamber, with dripping stalactites and stalagmites that rose from the cave floor like pointy tombstones. It was like watching National Geographic or something. I looked back the way I came and realized I'd explored so far that I couldn't even see the mouth of the cave anymore. I figured this was a good place to camp out for the time being. I felt better now, and was coming to terms with the fact that all I was getting away with was a few thousand in cash and this cool knife. As long as the cops didn't come this deep into the cave. I splashed the light of the headlamp all around the room, looking for a place to sit or lay down that wasn't too wet or rocky. My circle of light danced around the cave like a glowing eye in the darkness, and then something moved at the edge of that circle of light. It looked like a giant spider with sharp legs, and it leapt into the darkness. I turned my lamp in that direction, but I didn't see anything. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt another wave of queasiness. Frantically, I looked around the chamber to see if there were any more of these things. And suddenly, everything that seemed comforting now seemed threatening. The stalactites seemed to drip thick black fluid instead of the clean water they dripped before. The stalagmites on the floors seemed like spikes posed to impale me, and the cave walls felt like they were moving in on me. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. It's all in your head, I told myself. Then I opened my eyes. 2 glacier blue eyes stared back at me from the darkness, illuminated by the light of my headlamp. Then the eyes blinked out. I turned my light to that area and saw nothing but the cave wall. "Hello?" I demanded, trying to sound as menacing as I could. "Who's there?" The echoes of my questions returned to me as warbly pathetic whines. I fumbled around in my pocket and found the knife. I pulled it out, unsheathed it, and put the scabbard back into my pocket. "You don't want to mess with me," I said, brandishing my new weapon. "I suggest you show yourself so we can end this little game." Another movement at the edge of my vision, then another. I was dealing with more than one creature here. I swung my head from side to side so violently that pain exploded in one of my tendons. My mind raced. Was it better to stay in here with whatever these things are, or was it safer to go back outside? Would a few years in a jail cell be better than one night in a cave with whatever these animals were? Were they animals? What the hell even were they? Panic questions stacked up in my brain like Jenga tiles, and then came crashing down as another creature appeared at the edge of my beam of light. I scrambled and stumbled backwards, tripping over a stalagmite and sprawling on the stone floor of the cave. I wanted to get out of the cave. That was the decision. Screw it. I'll test my luck with the law, I told myself. I'll ditch the money and the knife, and I'll pretend I was just a lost hiker. But which way was out? You see, I was so disoriented that I had no idea. I picked a direction and ran. My circle of light bounced like a lone headlight of a car on a gravel road. I dodged stalagmites and splashed through puddles as I sought an exit. I saw an opening in the cave wall and decided to go for it. I saw more movement, and even another pair of those ice blue eyes at the edges of the light. but I yelled and I slashed my knife toward them as I ran. I plunged into the opening in the wall and ran down the natural passageway. It was a triangle-shaped corridor where two jagged walls met in a point above me. I cast a glance back and saw that none of the things were following me. Then I turned my gaze back to the corridor in front of me, and I stopped cold. At the center of my circle of light, one gleaming orb looked back at me. A doorknob. A stone door the same triangular shape as the corridor was cut into the rock. There was one word carved into it, in a language that I didn't understand. I heard a scuttling behind me, and I turned back. I got a better look at the thing this time as it retreated. It wasn't a spider at all. Those sharp spindles that I thought were legs were actually fingers. Black, pointy fingers on the hands of a humanoid creature. I couldn't make out its face or many of its other features, but I caught another glimpse of those icy blue eyes before the creature disappeared once again into the darkness. A scraping sound then filled the corridor, and I turned to see the stone door was opening up. Amber light flooded the corridor, warm and welcoming after my time in the darkness, and a man stepped into the doorway, silhouetted in the dim glow. "Are you human?" he asked. Yes, I'm human." His silhouette waved for me to come to him. What other option did I have? I hustled over to him, and as I got closer, I saw he was a middle-aged man with graying hair, a muscular build, and deep-set brown eyes. He grabbed my shirt and pulled me into the room. Then he closed the door and locked it. The room looked like it belonged to the Van Heim estate. Books were piled up on wooden tables, and strange statues dotted the room. Light glowed from a lone light bulb that dangled from the ceiling. A cot occupied one corner. There was another triangular door on the far side of the room. I looked back to the man, who was looking me up and down. "You look like you just came from that house up on the mountain," he said with a smirk. I recognized that knife. I lowered the knife and swallowed. "Who are you?" I asked. "Well, put away that knife and I'll tell you," he said. I pulled out the scabbard, slid the knife into it, and put it back into my pocket. I flipped off my headlamp, too. "Well, I'm Ferdinand Van Heim," the man said. "I believe you were at my father's house earlier tonight." "Listen," I said. No, I'm not mad," Ferdinand said. "Our family has more money than we know what to do with, hence why we spent so much time studying the lurkers." "Is that what those things are out there?" I asked. Ferdinand nodded and gestured for me to sit down at one of the tables in the room. I sat, and he settled into the chair opposite from me. "I'm not going to bore you with all the lore," Ferdinand said, "but you've stumbled into something very old and very strange, my friend. What's your name?" Charlie," I lied. Might as well stick with the same fake name from the heist. "Hello, Charlie," Ferdinand said. "What did you see out there in the cave? Or, what do you think you saw?" I looked down at my shaking hands and put them under the table. It's hard to describe. I didn't get a great look at them." Ferdinand chuckled and nodded his head. "Yeah, that's what they do," he said. "They stay at the edge of your vision. They lurk here, which is why we call them lurkers." "Why, though?" I asked. Ferdinand put his elbows onto the table, leaned forward, and shook his head. "Well, they appear to be motivated solely by misery and blood," he said. My stomach turned again, and the air in the room felt stale. "They circle us at all times," Ferdinand replied. "They seem to live in another dimension, but only appear to us at the corner of our vision to remind us that we're not alone. You see, they pick certain targets and then they terrorize them. We picked on some patterns of people they target. People who are very high or very low. Either people at the top of their fields, or people who are going through hard times, like the death of a loved one, I guess. These people seem to be particularly vulnerable. The lurkers appear to them and get closer and closer, until that person cracks. Cracks? I asked. Well, extreme acts of violence or destruction. Suicide, murder. And your family is, what, trying to stop them? Ferdinand nodded. Well, my father was afflicted years ago. He had to have us kids run his business for a short time while he went off on a worldwide journey to track these things down. He still travels non-stop, collecting artifacts that cultures from all over the world have created about the lurkers. Hell, you probably saw them. Hell, you might have even stolen some of them. I thought back to the items in the house, the paintings of faces that seemed to move, the statues of hands with sharp fingers. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, I said. No, you're not, Ferdinand replied, and neither am I. We have plenty of antiques and oddities, enough to make a museum about lurkers and their influence worldwide. We sat in silence for a few moments. I listened for rustling or scratching from outside the door, but I didn't hear anything. I looked to the door on the other side of the room. Is that the way out? I asked. Yes, Ferdinand says. It also leads to a lower point in the mountain road. It's not terribly long until morning, and I can escort you down there around sunrise, after the cops have left and when the tourists will start driving up and down the mountain for the views. Maybe one of them will pick you up. The next couple of hours were tense. Ferdinand and I made small talk, and neither of us wanting to share anything about ourselves. I asked for more information about these lurkers, but he was hesitant to share much. I examined the artwork displayed around the room and noticed one odd one in particular. It was a bust of a grinning woman with a veil across her face. I was amazed that somehow the sculpture turned a hunk of marble into a see-through veil with a vivid face, and depending on how the light was hitting the eyes beneath the veil, the eyes were either black or light blue, the same shade of blue as the lurkers. So what's the story behind this one? I asked Ferdinand. Well, that's the Duchess of Abiladon, he said in a reverent whisper. Throughout history, some lurkers have been able to take human form. They could somehow soften their fingertips and hide their eyes. But in certain light, or certain reflections, you could see their true form. The Duchess, deep in the Carpathian Mountains in Eastern Europe, is the most famous example. She and the Duke of Abiladon ruled over a small community of people on the mountain, and one day the entire community disappeared. There was only one survivor who said that if you saw the Duchess in the reflection of the mountain stream, she had sharp fingers, black hands, and eyes like glaciers. That's spooky, I said. Well, that's the world you've stumbled into, Charlie. Most people live their whole lives clueless about how close they are to other worlds. Worlds that exist in the darkness of a mountain cave, or the crystal blue waters of a stream. Worlds that exist in dark jungles and bright polar ice caps. Worlds that swirl around us like fog, visible for a time before the sun chases them away. I was sure not to ask about any more of the artwork. I'd had enough of this. I told Ferdinand I wanted to rest until dawn. I pretended to sleep on his cot, hand in my pocket on the hilt of my knife. After a while, I stirred and asked Ferdinand if it was dawn yet. Close enough, he said as he looked at his watch. And by the time we get down to the road, it'll be light out, and the cops should be long gone by now. He walked over to the back door and put his hand on the knob. He had a flashlight in his other hand. You ready? He asked me. I guess I have to be, don't I? I said. He smiled and turned the knob. A narrow stairway descended into the darkness in front of us. Ferdinand walked ahead of me and told me to close the door behind me. I did. I turned on my headlamp again, and along with Ferdinand's flashlight, we lit the way down the mountain. We weren't walking for 10 seconds before I heard the first scratching sound. "Ferdinand?" I whispered. "They won't hurt you," he said. "Just keep walking." My heartbeat pounded in my ears, but it still wasn't loud enough to drown out the scratching that seemed to come from all around us. It echoed up and down the stairwell. I looked back a few times but never saw anything. I couldn't see anything in front of us in the illumination of Ferdinand's flashlight either. I pulled out the knife. It cast ghostly reflections on the walls from our flashlights. I was in a panic by the time we got to the bottom of the stairs. I needed to get into the daylight, and I felt the same thing I felt in the cave earlier, where the prospect of getting picked up by cops was almost a comforting one. At the bottom of the stairs was a small circular chamber, dimly lit by flickering lamps on the walls. There was a door on the side opposite from the staircase. "Now through that door is a corridor that will take you to the road," Ferdinand said as he aimed his flashlight at the doorknob, "and then you could go back to the life you lived before you ever knew anything about this." "Thank you," I said. I felt like I wanted to puke. I thought I could still hear echoes of the scratching in the stairwell. I looked down at the knife in my shaking hand. I realized that the thick part of the blade was about the size of a pocket mirror. I looked back at myself and saw a greasy, sweaty, sick-looking mess. I turned the knife away from me and saw 2 icy blue specks in the reflection. They were Ferdinand's eyes. We made eye contact in the reflection of the blade. His eyes went wide, showing more of that glacial blue hue. I looked up at him as my stomach dropped for the 100th time that night. His eyes seemed dark and normal again, but I knew what I saw in that reflection, and so did he. "I really wish you hadn't seen that, Charlie," he said, and with a horrid slicing sound, sharp points burst through the ends of his fingers, and a tarry black substance oozed from his wrists. His eyes turned blue and his face grew darker, as if it were disguising itself. He crouched and brandished his newly black, sharp claws at me. "I'll forget about it," I said, backing away from him. "I swear, I won't tell anyone. I'll sound crazy anyway. I mean, nobody would even believe me." A cacophony of scraping sounded from the stairway. They were coming. I had to act right then. I had to get through Ferdinand and out that door. A calm washed over me that I hadn't had since the heist the night before. I switched my headlamp to strobe mode, hoping his light eyes were more sensitive to the darkness now. It worked. He put his hand over his face when I shined my light into his eyes. I ran at him and shoved him out of the way. He tumbled to the side, but not before he lashed out at me. One of his claws caught my forearm and sliced me nearly from the elbow to wrist. It was a shallow cut, but it was excruciating. I dropped the knife, which sounded like the clattering of a whole cutlery set in that echoey chamber, and with my other hand I twisted the doorknob and flung it open. I cast one final glance behind me and saw an army of lurkers emerging from the staircase. I slammed the door shut and ran. I was in a crevice that was just wide enough for me to fit in. It twisted and turned, but after a minute or two, I emerged into the mountain road. I cradled my bleeding arm and prayed for a car to come along. I still had stolen money in my pocket, but I didn't care. I needed to get away from here and never come back. 2 or 3 cars passed by me, but finally one slowed down for me on its way down the mountain. It was a shiny new BMW, which didn't seem like the kind of car to drive on a dusty mountain road. I climbed into the back seat and thanked the driver profusely. The driver was a woman in her 30s or 40s. She had delicate features and expensive earrings. I apologized to her for the blood, and she said she'd seen worse. "Where are you heading?" she asked. "And what are you doing on this mountain?" "I was caving," I told her. "And if you could take me to the hospital, that would be amazing." "Sure thing," she said. "You know, the caves on this mountain are very dangerous and closed to the public, you know." "Oh, I know," I said. "It was a stupid thing to do." "It really was. I haven't been in those caves for years." My blood went cold. "My family owns the house at the top," the woman said. "I was raised here." I shifted in the back seat so I could get a look at the woman in the rearview mirror. Two icy blue eyes looked back at me. The woman gripped the wheel tighter, and I thought I could hear the leather coating of the wheel ripping. "Just sit back, Charlie," she said. "I'll get you where you need to go."